see, I'm also recording the session. And I think yesterday we introduced part of the Python programming, and we talked about, I think I left when we were about to discuss on indentation. And to understand indentation, this is a part of standard procedure or the best coding practice, whereby you can be able to let me say punctuate or make your code in a manner that it's easier to understand every bit. And to understand that, let me introduce the use of function, and I'm going to create a function without a parameter, even though we'll still get a chance to do that. And if you go and open your Anaconda, you can also launch your Jupyter. We'll open a new script. And it said within the indentation, let me define, and by use of define, it's a keyword, and I can define a function 5. So that's the name of function that I want, and I want the function 5 to be, let's say, a function with the parameter x. So within the bracket, I can have x. That means x can take any argument. And for me to continue, so I've already defined my function, and you realize I will have to separate that block by now having an indent. And when you talk about indentation, that is the space you can see where the new line will start from. And like I said, you will have to define what the argument is. So I can go ahead and define x and say x is equal to 5, for instance. And then I will tell the software return. So all this thing is in your notes. And when you say you want the software to return to you the value of x, you'll have to now proceed and instruct the software on what you want to do. So like I said, x can take any argument. And I think the most important part here is on when to use print and return. So if you print, what are you printing? You will print the object that you have just created, which you have said it's a function. And what's the name of that function? We gave it a name as 5. And assuming x takes an argument of 3, then basically it will be okay, just a minute. So like I said, you want the function 5 to return to you any argument that you will take. So let me just write 5 without print. And you realize I'm getting 5 because the role of the function I've just created is meant to return x, which I've already defined x as 5. So I'm not teaching actually on the function part, but just know when you want to use indentation, you will introduce the full column. And what that means is the next line of code, you can be able to see that it starts from here. Here, the code I'm writing is so we need to file like inside way of now, just like having a comma in a sentence. Of course, we'll be able to see that about. I focus much at we try and it verifies that. I think that will have a lot of free time to go and review that with your notebooks. Let's talk about logical operators. And for logical operators, I've mentioned it as function in most of the time. And I said this is what binds your criteria of any condition that you will have. So as long as something makes sense, then you say it has logic. And logic always works with Boolean. And we referred to this during our advanced exam class. You created I think you were selecting some point. I always use a manager or a male and a manager. And with the function and function or, instruction specified must be met to be restricted, or condition is. This is not a new concept because we talked about this during SQL or the database language, and you realize that the same pattern repeats itself right from now. I believe this is a concept that by now you should be comfortable with. Let's talk about if statement. And a prominent example of a conditional statement in Python is if statement. And again, we talked about if statement with assigning grades. So we're going to repeat the same concept, but this time I want to create a different scenario. 5 is the same as 15 divided by 3. Of course, you know, in terms of the response you will get there, you will receive a function true. Okay. But sorry, I think I need to remove if. So we say whatever is in the left side is the same as what is in the right side. That's what the software is confirming by saying true. But if you're introducing if statement, then this way you're saying if five is the same as 15 divided by 3, then the next thing you need to come up, because you have introduced logic, is now the condition or the outcome. So we said what should happen if that is the case. So you start with value true, and how you will do that, you have to introduce indentation so that you say comma. If 5 is the same as 15 divided by 3, comma, then what do you want if that is the case? Then you can instruct your software to print a text, let's say confirmed. Let me use that as an example. And if I execute that code, the software return confirmed because it's true that 15 divided by sorry 5 15 divided by 3 is the same as 5. If I adjust the figures and maybe I say 5 is the same as 16 divided by 3, then you realize the software will not know what to do, because again I've not introduced the second option, and the second option is always value is false. Okay, so we can have statement and the use of if, you need to talk about the condition, and it said you have to have two outcomes. What should happen if that is the case? Also, what let me use it. I can have a variable, so I have an object x, and I can define x as, let's say, 4, and then I will now put my if statement or my logic statement, where I'll say if x is the same as, or let me use greater than, so you can say if x is greater than 8, comma, what should happen? Then I'll instruct the software that if that is the case, then print for me uh, first case. Okay. So if I execute this code, I'm not expecting the answer first case, because x is not greater than 8. So the first condition is not met. Now, what should the software do if that is not the case? Then I can introduce what you call else. Let's understand how to use else. I hope I'm not moving. So if that is not the case, the use of elif. So I've said if you introduce logic statement, which is if statement, you'll have to back it up with an else, which marks the end of the statement when you just have two options. But when you're talking about nested, that means you have more than one if statement. Then before you introduce else, you can have elif. And I've used an example of defining a function called compare to 5. And I said compare to 5 can take any argument. I'm sharing my screen. So indentation. So I said compare to 5 is just a function. And this function can be represented with a parameter z, and parameter z can take any argument. So I'll introduce full colon, and then I'll say what? If now the argument of z or z is something that is greater than, so if y is greater than, let's say 5, okay? Now, comma, what should happen? Now I'll tell the software return. Remember this time we're introducing return. So also bear in mind on when to use return and when to use print. So I'll tell the software return to me a text that says greater than. If it's a text, make sure it's enclosed in a speech marks. What if that's not the case? So if the argument of y is not greater than 5, then I'll say elif, which means it's just like introducing another if statement, and that should now come just below if statement. So I'll say elif, which denotes another if statement. And with elif, say what? Y is less than 5. So if y is less than 5, then what should happen? Indentation, and the software should return to me a text that says less than. And if it's a text, remember we said you can use either double speech marks or single, whichever works for you. So I'll say less than. And now with the two options, I have no choice but to introduce the last one, which now will end the logic test, which it's obvious. If the argument of the z is not something that is greater than 5, then it should be something less than 5. If those two conditions are not met, then there is the last one, which you can say else. And if you want to relate with else, you can go back to when you were assigning the grade of A. So we said if this student is not scoring E, D, all this grade, otherwise just give that person a grade of A. So that's the same deal we're doing here, which I'll say else return return now equals to return text that says equal. Now, if I execute this code, now I need to use my function which is called compare to 5. So I'll come here and say compare to 5. Compare to 5. And compare to 5 can take, let's say, an argument of, let's put 10. And if the argument is 10, then it means I'm expecting the software to tell me greater, because z, I'm saying, is taking an argument of 10, which then is above 5. If I execute that, the saying y is not defined. I think I need to use y. I think it's my bad. I define the function with an argument of z, and then I've used y. So let me just put y there. And if I execute this code, I should be getting, okay. So like I said, in these classes, spend a lot of time why you're like, why is not okay. And compared with pixel and if z greater than 5, then if, okay, let me see where I'm missing out. If y, I don't know what I've now changed, but yeah, whatever is I was now what is in play should be a simple addition, but just understand the logic behind it, that what should happen. So let's change. Maybe we say compared to 5 or the kind of 4, and see if the software will return less than. Of course, it's working. And if I give an argument of 5, then I expect the software to tell me that the answer is equal to. Okay, I think I'm not that good, but nonetheless, this page with me together, and we are creating functions. And let me just leave you to digest what I've been able to of else and elif. So it's more of one combination of everything I have, and go and look at the lecture. Everything I'm talking about is in the lecture notebook. In case you will face challenges after you have reviewed the lecture, write a message to me in the comment section in our course using now the student portal, or write to me a text. So there's a part of message in the student portal. You can always leave me a message there, or you can WhatsApp me. But between now and tomorrow, go and review the part of indentation, if statement, and creating function, so that when we meet in our class tomorrow, all of you we should be having more of an engagement, because the next part is actually how to use these functions. And with the use of the function, I'll bring in the aspect of creating weights, as what I'm seeing here. So if you have not captured the concept of indentation and the use of logic, then we'll have trouble when now we introduce things like wage and use of if statements. So for those who are, I don't know if, I hope coding like this would be much easier. So, but now that the internet is here, let me just introduce creating parameter before I leave you. So assuming I want to create a parameter called simple, so I'll use a define function, and def is just a keyword, and I can define a function called complex. Let me give it another name. Let me even call it 10. And if you open a parenthesis without having an argument inside, then you say you're creating a function without a parameter. I will do the indentation, and after indentation, I will tell the software that every time I write 10, print, of course, this is Python. I think Python 2, Python 3 is just the use of parentheses. So I'll introduce parentheses and say print and close in the speech marks, let's say 10. If I execute that code, and then I write here 10, since 10 doesn't take any argument, I will just, I should receive a text 10, if that makes sense. But if I'm a function, maybe I define a function called add 5. Since it's a name, you can't have spaces. And I can say the functions for add 5 can take any argument. I will do indentation, and then I'll say x plus 5. That is what the software should return. So I think I should say return. What should the software return? Every time I write add 5, the software should return to me whatever the argument of x that will take plus 5. So if I say add 5 and I put 2, that means x takes an argument of 2. I execute that, I should be getting 10. Sorry, 7, because it's actually 5 plus whatever x would be. That is how you create a function. And I said create a function with a parameter or create a function without a parameter. If you grasp that concept and you understand it better, then tomorrow I want us to talk about now how to calculate wage as a function of number of hours that someone works. Okay. Then we also see what if you now say I want to pay this person their wage together with some sort of bonus. Okay. And I believe this conversation we can have a bit better if all of us were on the same page with if statements, else, elif, index, and creating function. Any those who don't you guys so that you're in stress from me to if there's any feel free to communicate. See you.